Okay, so here we go with another DIY moment with the car. My check engine light is on and I have received the trouble code of 420, which is a catalyst system efficiency below threshold on bank 1, which sounds like the O2 sensor 1. You have roughly 2 or more sensors, O2 sensors on your car, and I'm going to check it out. Now my car is high, I have high mileage, so it is possible that the catalytic converter is out. However, I'm going to try doing some troubleshooting on my own. I'm going to try a catalytic converter cleaner first, and then I'll move to the oxygen sensor. You know, you have a couple of them on the car, so I checked it out here. My oxygen sensor looks fine from here. You know, the wire isn't frayed or anything like that. Catalytic converter itself isn't actually damaged. So now it's just about the amount of carbon and all that other stuff that mixes into the catalytic converter, how bad it is. So I'm going to try and clean it out first with a catalytic converter cleaner. And then after that, I'll replace the O2 sensor one at a time. And I'll make replacing the actual catalytic converter the very last thing. So let's get some cleaner in it first. I'll let you know how that goes. And then I will reset the trouble code on the car, clear the code, and we'll route it again and see how that works. So let's do it. Here is the breather. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start off by getting some type of catalytic converter cleaner, and I'll run that through, see how that works. If that works, I'll let you know. After that, if I still get the code, I'll work my way to the O2 sensor. I'll replace the sensor. I will not replace the catalytic converter until after I have exhausted these other things first. All right, so let's go get some catalytic converter cleaner. Let's try that out first. And if something like this happens to you, if you get the code 420, you can try these steps first. All right, so let's go. Okay, so I have a bottle of catalytic converter cleaner. Okay, so the directions for this catalytic converter cleaner is you got to empty the contents of the bottles into the fuel tank at a quarter tank of gas. I am at a quarter tank of gas, and it says drive normally for 10 to 15 miles, then refuel. Let's pour this in the tank, and then we're going to drive for 10 to 15 miles, and then I'll fill up, and then we'll go home and clear the code, see how it works. Okay, so now I'm going to drive about 10-20 miles, and then I'm going to fill it up. All right, so I just filled this thing up. It was $81. We did about 20 miles on the converter cleaner. Now I'm back home. I have filled the tank. So now I will clear the trouble code. Okay, back in the garage, the catalytic converter cleaner did not work. Rode it around for a while. The check engine light stayed off momentarily, but it came back on. So now what I'm gonna do is go ahead and replace the catalytic converter along with the O2 sensors, the one that's actually attached to the catalytic converter, which is bank 1. So this is a DIY day. Do it yourself. Keep in mind I must let you know I am not a certified mechanic. I have just decided to do this myself. Take you guys along with me just in case you have something similar, you have a similar problem and you want to try and do it yourself. When I'm done, I'll let you know what I encountered as far as if there was any problems or whatever. Just in case you decide to do this yourself, I'll give you some things to look out for. So in the meantime, let's get started. So here we are underneath the hood, and this is what I have in mind. So right now, as you can see, my catalytic converter is right here. And that's the O2 sensor that we're going to replace. We're going to replace the O2 sensor and the catalytic converter, which goes back. It is held in by 6 bolts. We got 3 up front, 3 here, 1, 2, and it's the 3rd one underneath. And then there's 3 back in the back. So right now, of course, you can't get to it from here. So I'm going to remove. The goal is to remove all of this here. I'm going to remove this, all of this here, the heat shield here as well, so that I can access down in there. So once I remove all of this, I'll let you see what it's like after I've removed everything, and then we'll get underneath the car. So of course, what we're going to do, we're going to jack the car up. As you can see, I have it on 4 stands right now. There's 1, stand 1, and 2, and here's stand 3 and stand 4. Also want to let you know that even though it's not October, this Oktoberfest is good. This is a good beer. As long as you can keep it ice cold. Anyway, so I've had to use some extensions on the wrench to take off the heat shield. So the way I've decided to access the catalytic converter is I'm going to go from this part, taking off the passenger side wheel here, and I'm going to remove the axle here. I'm going to remove the axle, which first we have to take off this heat shield, and then the axle's head is held in by 6 bolts. So there's a heat shield right here. I'm going to remove this heat shield. So as you can see, I've already started to unscrew this shield here, the piece here and this piece. So this one's held in by this bolt. So I'm taking this one off now. This cap comes off after I take off the 3rd bolt up top. So it has 2. This is 1. Well, it has 3. I already took the first one off. So now we can see the bottom of the catalytic converter here. I'm going to spray the bolts with some WD-40. Next up, I'm going to remove these 6 bolts here. Took the cap off here. I'm going to take the airflow out, all of this, and the mass airflow, all the intakes, so that we can get down here. So I'm going to remove all the harnesses here, all the hoses, the air filter, all of this. I'm going to move out of the way, unhook these, and then the heat shield here. I'm going to remove this, and we'll unlatch. We'll take this off on this side so that we can remove the railing here, and that way we can access the bolts here. Here's 1. There's 1 here, 2, and then 1 underneath. So we got to get all of this out of the way so that we can get underneath there. Move the axle there so that I can access the catalytic converter. I removed everything here, and the fact of the matter is you have to get to these 3 bolts on this particular catalytic converter. So I had to move the air box, mass airflow, and all of that out of the way so that I can not only get to these 2, but underneath the third one as well, there was a heat shield, 2 shields here. I removed those. The line here, I loosened it up so that I can move it as well. And this one's up here. Now, if we go underneath the car, what we're doing next is we're gonna remove this clamp right here. There's a clamp here. We're gonna remove it. It runs from here. That's your clamp that connects the rear exhaust to the front exhaust, which runs up to the catalytic converter, which is here. So these 3 bolts here, we will remove after we take this off. So I'm going to remove the clamp and then this one here, which attaches the exhaust to the car itself. We're going to remove this one here. And we're going to remove these 2. I've already disconnected the O2 sensor. So the O2 sensor has been disconnected. It runs along the back side here, plugs in right here. I'm going to remove the O2 sensor. The 3 screws here, 1, 2, and the one on the bottom, I've already loosened them up. We've detached the front exhaust from the rear exhaust. There. Took the clamp off. Once I remove this screw, we'll pull this entire piece down. I've already removed the 3 bolts that are holding the catalytic converter into the turbo. I just removed the clamp that holds the front exhaust, that connects the front exhaust to the rear exhaust. Now I'm going to remove this retaining bolt here. And after we do that, that should drop the catalytic converter down. We'll drop the entire catalytic converter as well as the front exhaust. After I remove the catalytic converter, I'll remove the second O2 sensor. So as you can see, we have removed the catalytic converter along with the front exhaust. To me, that was easier because these 3 bolts, they're pretty much rusted on, so I left it on there. So I'm gonna have to take these 3 off, and they were very hard to get to. So I just took off the entire front exhaust, which is held on by this clamp in the center between the front exhaust and the rear exhaust. It was attached with the 3 bolts. We removed the 3 bolts here. This is the gasket that I'll have to be replaced. This is the gasket here. That was on the front. Wasn't too complicated to take it out. Definitely wasn't easy. I had to, of course, remove the front exhaust along with the catalytic converter, which means you gotta detach that. A lot of that's rusted up, so you will need some type of penetrant that you can spray on it and leave on there. And then the other part's gonna be getting all of your air filters and mass airflow sensors and everything out of the way so that you can reach down in there and loosen the 3 bolts that hold the catalytic converter to the turbo in the case of this car. So it's going to vary from vehicle to vehicle. Some may be a lot easier. And of course, if you have a bay, because I'm just sitting on jacks, so I have to get underneath the car, that makes it a lot tougher. But if you do this in a bay, you probably could get it out in half the time. Okay, so just to give you an update, let you know how I got those bolts off. I used a propane torch. The bolts were pretty stubborn. I got one of them did loosen. I'll show you. 2, the nut broke on them. So here it broke here. This one's stuck in there. And we got one stuck in there. I just have to hammer those out. The other one here. Got this one loose. So we got that one. And since the nuts broke on the other one, it'll just come off now. So as you can see here, remove this one. And there we go. here are the parts we will be replacing. We're going to replace the old catalytic converter with this new one here. And of course, these are the two old O2 sensors, the upstream and the rear. And we're going to replace it with the new upstream and the rear as well. Of course, you need your gaskets. So I had the flange gaskets here. So we have the old gaskets, we have the new ones. Okay, so let's get started. So now, as you can see, we have the new catalytic converter in there along with the two new O2 sensors. And now it's just a matter of putting everything back together again. That's the new catalytic converter. We put the new sensors in. Okay, so we just put it all together. We're going to connect the battery and then we're going to start it up. I'll clear the code, get out for a spin and see how it acts. Okay, so now it's time for the moment of truth. I'm going to start it up, clear the code. We'll take it for a ride and see how it goes. The check engine light is off. I didn't even have to clear the code. I thought I was gonna have to clear the code. This signal here, it'll turn off once I start driving. That's my emergency brake and the airbag. All right, so now we are on the road. The engine light is off. So I'm gonna take the car now to get an emission inspection. And then I'll let you guys know how that turned out. Now this is a hurry up and wait situation. We are going to get the emissions done. We are now leaving the emission station we just passed. Okay, so I'm done with my D.I.Y catalytic converter replaced. I took out the old one. This is the original Audi catalytic converter. I did replace it with a new aftermarket one. It is much smaller, so I'm not sure of the type of output comparison that I'm getting in regards from the old one to the new one. I don't know anything about that. We do know that it's smaller, which means it contains less minerals and things of that nature, which means it's probably not going to last as long as this one. However, it'll still do well nonetheless. I replaced the two O2 sensors, the upstream and the rear. Listen to this one. Got a lot of loose stuff in it. Anyway, give you a couple tidbits. I removed my front passenger tire as well as the axle. That allowed me an easier access to drop the catalytic converter along with the front exhaust. And the reason I had to do that, because the three bolts on the bottom of the catalytic converter, they were rusted tight. They were rusted and corroded, and I could not remove them. So I had to take the top three bolts off, which you can access after you remove the mass airflow sensor, the air filter, and all that stuff up top. Give yourself some room. You can access the three bolts here. And the reason I moved the passenger tire and the right axle was so that I can easily drop this down along with the front exhaust with no problem. So anyway, hopefully this video will give you guys an idea, just in case if you want to do your own catalytic converter, maybe some of this information will be useful. Just keep in mind, I'm not a certified mechanic, so I do recommend you consult with a certified mechanic or have them do it if you don't feel comfortable. That's it for this D.I.Y catalytic converter replace, along with the O2 sensors. It's ReekG. Until next time, you take care of yourself. Peace.